Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. It's great to see such a good crowd here. I hope a number of you were able to be here last week for Gitti's presentation. This is sort of a sequel to that. She made it about 12, 13 slides into the social skills development and sort of the underlying social skills portion of into the presentation regarding that topic. So I'm going to pick right up where she left off. If anybody wasn't able to make that and wants a recording of last week when Getty presented on the first portion of this presentation, please let us know and we'll send that your way. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share. If at any point during the presentation you want to raise your hand and ask a question, please let me know. I'm happy to do that. And we'll have questions at the end as well. All right, let's get to sharing. Here we go. So as I said, this presentation is entitled Think Social. It's about social skills themselves and how they are conveyed. And let's go ahead and get going. Okay, sorry, I'm just getting an alert that somebody's trying to join. And that's great. Hopefully she's able to join us here soon. Okay, so when teaching children, yes, continue to share. Let me know if anything it isn't coming through, you're not able to see or anything like that. Please don't hesitate to raise your hand. Okay, so when teaching children, please remember that sometimes our socially challenged students are not acting out behaviorally, yet they're acting out because they're lacking social knowledge. It's not so, we kind of associate, we see them uh, calling out or, engaging in some kind of disruptive behavior in order to, with the intention of disrupting or with the intention of, gaining sort of negative or critical feedback or escape, the way we generally view disruptive behavior. But we also need to bear in mind that some pre-teaching is necessary. Let's not jump to conclusions and implement behavior plans to decrease their behaviors. Let's first teach them, hey, when you want attention during class, raise your hand. If that's not something they've been taught explicitly, they may not pick up on the social cues that everyone else in the classroom is doing that. That requires a sort of higher level observation of standards and expectations that may not apply to our learners, and that we should always try to teach first before launching an intervention. All right, let's get into treatments for developing social skills. We're kind of going to go over all of these elements: seeing and thinking, interpreting things that we observe, uh, processing, listening, talking, and using one's body. All right, so um, joint attention. So joint attention, shared focus of two individuals on an object. Uh, ways to tell that you don't have joint attention is that their eyeballs are sort of all over the place or they're not looking at the same direction as everyone else. Gazing at different objects in a small array, gazing around the room, figuring out what I'm looking at, and looking at something and internalizing thought. Those last three are examples of joint attention. When a mother holds a child's coat, the child's thoughts are, we're going outside. They have joint attention on the same object, which is conveying an underlying message. Generally, joint attention, while associated with eye contact, is not eye contact itself. It's like um, if you and I are having a conversation, I look up because someone's walking in the door or something. If you also look at the door, that's joint attention. We are jointly attending to a particular stimulus. Joint attention could be a matter of watching a movie. It could be listening to a teacher, everybody's eyes in the same place, that kind of thing. Just sort of like having a collective notion of what is going on and what we're paying attention to. Social self-awareness. So self-awareness is a concept we're defining here as knowledge and awareness of one's own character, personality, feelings, motives, and desires. That's sort of uh, metaphysical there on some level. How much can one know oneself? But to know who you are in a particular situation, to compare oneself to others, both in terms of what makes you an individual and them individuals and all that kind of thing, but also like how you fit into a collective, and how others are behaving and how you can match your behavior to meet them. Are you able to talk about one's own strengths and weaknesses and to look at others and figure out what they need to do? Like I was saying, the awareness of social expectations. So yeah, I mean, a lot of our kids who are more verbal might say, "I struggle with this," or "I need to stim in order to do this kind of thing," or I'm different in this way. And when you're able to do that, that's great because it's a huge element of self-advocacy. Um, or I have a hard time paying attention. Can I take breaks? All these kinds of things are great. Um, Social and situational awareness. Now, situational awareness is being aware of what's happening in the environment, figuring out where you are and what's expected of you. So, recognizing a changed situation in the same setting. So, again, there's no one set of appropriate behaviors, right? We talk to kids a lot about inside and outside voices, right? That's because there's an expectation for volume, running around, what you can do with your body, what you can do with your voice, all these kinds of things that might be inappropriate in one setting. Sort of describing a gym here. You can basically go wild as long as you're not knocking people over, versus a conference room or an assembly if we're talking about a school setting, um, where the expectation is very different. You're meant to have a calm body, stay sitting, engage in joint attention, have a quiet voice, all that kind of thing. So knowing that those expectations change based on environments is very important. Taking perspective on yourself, being able to observe others and be aware of oneself and know if you're matching those expectations, and be aware of how others perceive your behavior. And again, that's we're going to get into in a second theory of mind, but having a sense of what others are thinking can be really, really challenging for our learners. That's a fundamental element of autism and of that social deficit. So, perspective taking, viewing a situation from another person's point of view. I think about you, you think about me. I think about your motives and intentions. I think about what you were thinking about. I monitor my behaviors so that I can keep you thinking about me the way I want you to think about me. Look, I think we're all very aware that this can be a difficult thing to interpret. Sometimes people have particular dispositions or mannerisms that may imply that they are displeased with you when in fact that's just sort of their general bearing and they can't help it. Sometimes folks have extremely sunny dispositions, which make them a little tougher to read in terms of if they're unhappy. But broadly speaking, we can look at facial expressions and body language and know, oh, this person's kind of, or tone of voice. This person's kind of had it with me. This person's not really enjoying what I'm doing, and I should probably alter it. Um, or they're not looking my way, or they're smiling at me. Maybe they gave me a thumbs up. There's an interpretation of my behavior that I know is positive and that I should maintain. So, um, that there's a whole and there's elements of like I know that I'm a student and you're a teacher, and because of that you want this out of this situation: general calm, general attending, politeness, etc. So like going in knowing this is what you want broadly, what you want of me, what you want of the class, that kind of thing helps to inform it too, because if you know the expectation, it's easier to meet it. Perspective taking, viewing a situation from another person's point of view. There's a funny example here built in. Let's have a look at that one. Um, Escape, pull this up. Oh, okay. One sec. Um, is it Akberet? Akberet Tesfagabar? I'm so sorry if that's a mispronunciation. But you raised your hand. Are you? You would need to unmute yourself. Is everything okay? Okay, I'm not hearing from you, so I'm gonna go on. But you have permission to talk if you have something you're trying to say. All right, I'll go ahead and play the video. It's very quick.
AmeriQuest Mortgage, proud sponsor of the NFL.
Okay, so uh, let's go back to our presentation real quick. Oh, shoot. It's done that thing where it's hidden over to the side. One moment, folks. Sorry, a little bit of technical difficulties. Here we go. Okay, share. Okay, so um, all right, so ability to consider others. Obviously, in the video we saw, there were a lot of indicators of a particular situation that turned out not to have been accurate. I think if obviously she saw a big red pile and him holding a knife and her cat. Um, that would be worrisome. But looking at his face, where he looked surprised and apologetic and eager to explain, one would probably know that there is a more reasonable explanation of what's going on. But also, his look of her horror likely made him all the more eager to explain. Um, knowing, so we can guess at thoughts. We have indications of thought. Thoughts are what we refer to in ABA as private events. And because of that, we recognize that we're better suited to interpret behaviors. But we have some indication of people's thoughts, certainly plenty of indications of people's emotions. I'm sure a lot of your kids have emotional recognition as one of their programs. It's one of the elements used to diagnose autism and has been for some time. Um, being able to interpret how someone feels based on how they look is very important. Physical motives. Uh, when you recognize that someone is walking up to you, there's little things that we don't even recognize that we're recognizing in the way someone strides, the way they look at us, which indicates whether they intend to come and talk to us or if they're just walking past us. Um, there's elements, and this is its own PowerPoint, but because it's referenced, a belief system or a cultural standard, this can be really wide ranging, but it can affect the way that men and women interact. It can impact the way that people uh, talk to children. It can impact elements of personal distance, personal space. All of that goes into cultural standards and belief systems. So that needs to be taken into account when interacting with people, especially if that's a known element of the person you're interacting with. Personality, I referenced this earlier, disposition, the way someone carries themselves, like that. If nothing else, it gives you a baseline, like it establishes a norm. It's like I know this person is generally very chipper and now they're sort of quiet and withdrawn. That's a reason, like a good way for me to know something's going on with them. Um, whereas if someone is typically very quiet and withdrawn, that may not indicate anything that requires like a check-in. And uh, situational cues. Again, if someone greets you, this is referring to, I think, if someone saying hello to you at a funeral, everything's going to be very muted. You're going to be, hey, how are you? And not, if someone says hello to you at a funeral, go, hey, great to see you. That would be weird, and not well received. So that's all interpretation of situations and of people, that goes into those sort of calculations of exactly how we want to carry ourselves. All right, so theory of mind, I referenced this earlier. The ability to interpret your own and other people's mental and emotional states, sort of what we've been getting at. Understanding that each person has unique motives and perspectives, figuring out what people, these are big things. What people know, what they think, what they guess, what they decided, and what they've forgotten. So it's really a lot. Um, I mean, and I think one of the big, I hope, takeaways of this presentation is to recognize that our brains are working so hard and doing so much to interpret all of these little interactions we have with people, people we know well, people we love and see all the time, strangers, um, bosses, employees, all kinds of things, where we are making these really uh, uh, delineated interpretations based on our knowledge of human behavior, of people specifically, of their histories, things we've learned about social standards, etiquette, things like that. Like there's just so many considerations that come into play, and understanding that our the loved ones we're here to talk about, the folks with autism, understandably, this is where things need to be learned more deliberately. That a lot of these things that we are doing that are unconscious are things that need to be taught and processed and focused on more. That it's the automatic piece of it that they're often missing. So, um, figuring out how to deceive people, uh, incorrect conceptions. Okay, so showing a box to someone and telling them, I went to the store to buy what is inside this box. Do you think I know what is in this box? Uh, it's an interesting question, but because I mean, I think the answer everyone would give is yes. I bought it, so I probably know what's in it. But based on the experience and the information that I've provided you, yes, I know what you know, and I think that about you based on what I've been told. That kind of thing. All right, so this is an example where we have some information and we can draw certain conclusions. This is Anthony. Anthony is reading a book. When he's done, Anthony puts the book on the table. Anthony leaves to get something from the kitchen. Look, Sonia comes in and moves the book from the table to a drawer. Then Sonia leaves. Look, Anthony comes back to read some more. So if y'all want to raise your hands and answer this question, you can. I think it's all pretty self-evident. Where did Anthony put the book? We know that he put it on the table. Oh, sorry. There we go. Just making sure nobody's raising their hand. We know that he put it on the table. Where's the book now? It's in the drawer. Where will Anthony look for the book first? Of course, he will look for it on the table. We know where the book is because we're an objective observer. Um, but it also looks like Sony has left the drawer open, so I don't think it'll be too hard for him to find it. But of course, he does not know the book has been moved. Sonia is not there to tell him, so he is going to look at the table first and then be looking around for the book. Uh, we really know a good bit about how he's going to feel. He's going to feel confused. He's going to feel maybe slightly anxious, and we know what his motivation is, which is to find the book and to continue reading. Now, we're on to interpreting information. When you make sense of what's going on based on previous knowledge and generalizing it to different situations. Um, so, this sort of interpretation focuses on details. It's very literal, and it is not learned. Like we said, this is a thing that tends to be innate. Children must have self-awareness, situational awareness, and proper perspective-taking skills in order to interpret information correctly. Those are three building blocks of these sorts of interpretations, which are all pretty distinct. You need to know who you are in a situation and how a situation is responding to you. Situational awareness, what is expected of one in a situation, and what others are thinking and doing, and the sort of knowledge they're working off of in order to be able to interpret everything that's going on. Here's just a little picture uh, that sort of conveys obliviousness. We have one sort of chipper, seemingly younger child following an older child who has snacks. Maybe he's interested in the snacks. Maybe he's just interested in hanging out with them. But what he's not registering is how unwelcome he is with this face. This kid doesn't want anything to do with this kid, at least not at this moment. Um, so that is one of those things. I don't know if he may lack the self-awareness to know what the older boy thinks of them. He may be failing in terms of perspective taking. Regardless, this is at least in this moment, in this snapshot, a failure to interpret the available information. So, uh, self-awareness, situational awareness, perspective taking, theory of mind, and the interpretation of information. All these skills allow us to share space together, play well with others, engage in conversations, empathize emotionally, and speak clearly to other people. We're really describing the broad swath of social interaction here. Um, and being able to know who we are, what is expected, what others are thinking, and what they know, um, interpreting the interplay of knowledge and awareness. That's this is the theory of mind. Really, is the blend of perspective and self awareness, and the interpretation of information. That is all, um, the underpinning of what allows us to do all these things, which is basically just be a social person in the world. Now, we're getting into eye contact. Undoubtedly a target many of you are familiar with as well. Look at all these people looking at each other. They're doing great. Not a great handshake. All right. Eye and think contact, maybe a term you're not as familiar with. So, eye contact is not just looking at other people's eyes. Uh, It's figuring out other people's thoughts, emotions, motives, and intentions. Big relevant to this section is the old aphorism, "The eyes are the windows to the soul." We learn quite a lot about people by looking into their eyes. When making eye contact with someone, you're also letting them know that you are listening and internalizing what they are saying. It's a way of conveying that you are present. Think with your eyes. We can show interest in other people by using our eyes to make proper eye contact, of course. Uh, so we use our eyes to problem solve. Sorry, I don't know what to do with this example. That doesn't. That's me. We use our eyes to problem solve. You know, we take in most of the information we have in the world with our eyes. We track how others respond to what we were saying within a conversation. Something's not well received, or if the person we're talking to is confused, or if they're interested. All of these things are things we take in with our eyes by looking at the eyes of others. Our eyes also help us make smart guesses versus wacky guesses. So, we see a sliced open apple, a smart guess, when asked how many seeds there are, would be about six. Maybe that's not perfectly accurate, but, we see this is split right down the middle. We see two, presumably, uh, it would be two this way and two this way, and that would give us six. Very informed and reasonable. If you just look at that sliced open apple and yes, oh, I think there's 1,000 seeds in there. That's not using the relevant or the available information to make a great guess. That's you know, really the only reason you can guess there's 1,000 seeds is if you've confused it for a pumpkin, maybe. You don't know what an apple looks like. You're not using your eyes and you're not interpreting information correctly. So, uh, making smart guesses helps us figure out hidden social rules. So, there we go. Again, we take in information, we're able to interpret it quite well. hidden rules, unspoken social rules. So example would be how to stand in an elevator, right? Uh, if some kids have never ridden an elevator before, they can get in, and if they get really close to someone else, that's sort of failing the test. If they decide it's time to lay down on the floor, that's not right. But if they walk in and there's someone in there and they see that person has found a corner and is standing still and has, a reasonable amount of space between themselves and others, interpreting that and applying it to oneself is perfect. Same with how to stay in line. Um, uh, where you sit in a pizza store. Again, all of these are sort of like a lot of personal space standards, but that's important. Knowing how close to be, because it's not just I need to give a certain person a certain amount of space. Look at this line. If this person decided that they wanted to stand back here, the line ceases to function. You actually need to be fairly close to someone in that context, as opposed to an elevator, as opposed to a pizza store. So it's all of these things really have their own niche behavior, which not to blow the end, but towards the end um, we oh sorry, there we go. We talk about how there aren't social nuance and social situations are so complex and so varied that there aren't really set rules. There's an ever sort of evolving minutia of considerations, and that these skills allow us to interpret those and make the best call we can. All right, expected behavior versus unexpected behavior. Expected is having appropriate behavior based on the situation, and unexpected behavior is having inappropriate behavior based on the situation. So, perfect example, someone's sitting at their seat, uh, doing an assignment. You see calm body, set shoulders. They're clearly not saying anything. Then we got this guy who's got his knee up on the table. He's crawling all over it. Teacher doesn't look happy. That's the thing. It's inappropriate, and we'll get into why that's an issue. So, there's also comfortable thoughts versus uncomfortable thoughts. Um, that's, you know, it, intrusive thoughts that aren't appropriate for a particular situation. You can't regulate that necessarily. There are elements of psychiatry that help people with that if it's like a truly challenging intrusive thought. But mostly, what we want them to recognize with comfortable and uncomfortable is appropriate and inappropriate, which is to say, there's some thoughts we say out loud and some we don't, and some thoughts we act on and some we don't. And making that distinction is really the valuable piece. Social behavior map, a treatment-based framework that teaches the domino effect of social behavior and behavioral responses. Every behavior affects how people feel, which affects they respond to, which affects how they respond, which affects how you feel. So, this is essentially ABC, except it's not. Sometimes it's focused on disruptive behavior, but but we're meant to capture like a broader spectrum. So it's sort of like this happened, then you did this, and this is how people responded. And you kind of have a really broad rundown of, you know, basically this was successful, this wasn't successful, this was well received, this wasn't well received, that kind of thing. So you can kind of get a look at different behaviors. Here, so here's a social behavior map for what's expected and what's unexpected and the different results. So uh, here is my behaviors is what's expected in the situation. Let's take the in-seat behavior as an example. I sit at my desk and I do my work. There's feelings about my behaviors. My teacher smiles at me and gives me then how or my teacher is happy with me. How others treat me based on how they feel about my behaviors. I get a gold star. How I feel based on how I am treated in that situation. I'm happy. I love gold stars. Unexpected. My behavior is unexpected in the situation. I climb on the table. Others' feelings about my behavior. The teacher is upset with me. How others treat me based on how they feel about my behavior. I get time out. How I feel based on how I'm treated in the situation. Not good. I wanted that gold star and I wanted the teacher to be happy with me. Standing in line for gym. Here's, to take a new one, same concept. My expected behavior. Stand in line with hands down. How people feel. Good, calm, fine. How they treat me. Very nicely. And how I feel. I feel great, included, and happy. Then, unexpected. I stand in line and push people. How people feel about it. They feel hurt. They feel upset. They don't like me. How they treat me. They don't want to stand next to me. How I feel. I'm angry and unhappy. Now, I will say, again, talking about our community specifically, um, this is we have kids who are willing to engage in behaviors in order to get specific outcomes. Like if they pushed in a line and that means they get to the front of the line and they get a popsicle first, they might not feel the ire and disapproval of the people around them. They'll just be pleased that they got the popsicle. Or, if they're trying to escape, if the situation I was describing earlier, if they're climbing on the table in order to escape instruction and then they go to timeout, they may be pleased with that. This is really for our learners who have learned to be socially mediated and whose moods and feelings are dictated by how others respond to them. Um, so which I think most folks get to, but especially for our younger learners, this may not be their first. This may not be how like I stand in line and push people. They don't like me. They don't want to stand next to me. They may not feel angry and happy. They may feel, you know, great because they got whatever it was they were trying to get. So, all this should be attenuated to an individual. All right, the 4 steps of communication. Thinking about where you are and who you want to talk to. Um, you know, uh, it could be something utilitarian. I'm standing in line waiting to talk to the person at the post office because I need to send a shipment, or I'm at a party and there's someone who I think is a potential friend and I haven't talked to them much and I want to, broach a conversation with them. Establish physical presence. You get close enough but not too close so that you can begin to speak with someone. Use eyes to think about others. Maybe there's, you know, when I'm at a party, I'm usually watching my kids running around. Or there might be a sports game on, or there might be kids swimming in the pool, or whatever it is. You can engage with that person and then engage with them by looking directly at them, and then language to relate to others. You make some kind of appropriate uh, uh, opening gambit. Say hello, say something that might be of mutual interest, etc. All right, and here we are. I alluded to this earlier. Let's remember there are no rules for our social world. Some might say that's what etiquette is. But the thing about etiquette is there's volumes and volumes and volumes of it because it describes, what exactly what fork to use for what dish, or you know, particular presents to bring to particular gatherings. There's so many gradations. So there's certainly no hard and fast rules. There are guiding considerations, and those considerations are rooted in others' feelings. The best thing we can do, the most effective thing we do is listen to others and attend to others. So we have to take what we know and what we learn and adapt it to new environments and situations and encourage our kids and our loved ones to do the same. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. It's great to see such a good crowd here.